Thank you so much, Derek, for coming on today.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It's an honor and a privilege. Thank you.
When did you first discover your love of music?
When I was very, very young. To give you a little bit of history, my mom and my dad were both in the music industry. My mom was in a group. She was a lead singer in a group in the late '60s called the Pretenders. It was an R&B group, and my dad was in the world famous Drifters. He was in the Drifters from the mid '70s to maybe the early '90s. So growing up, the music, was always in my house of different genres. So obviously I knew about, the Motown movement. Then obviously, a lot of the rock and roll stuff that was happening in the '50s, the '60s, the '70s, obviously with disco coming into play, and obviously me being born in the late '70s and just kind of growing up in the '80s. Basically all of that I consumed. So music was always around me all the time.
So, because it was always around you, that's the reason like you got into it because your family was into it and just
Well, the thing is that I always wanted to. They didn't. First of all, like they didn't force it upon me. As a matter of fact, my dad, God rest his soul, he was adamant about me not even getting involved in show business because he just said how tough it was. You know what I mean? So when I was in high school, some friends of mine, we used to sing every morning, right? And we were trying to do the whole singing group thing because that was the thing in the '90s. They had a lot of R&B groups out at that time, and I always, we wanted to record, we wanted to, do all these things, and obviously we drifted apart. And I always had in the back of my head that I was going to get involved in the entertainment business somehow, some way, and it took a little while, a lot longer than I thought, but at the end of the day, it's like I would always go through these, moods. Or I would just get into songwriting mode. I would just write songs, write songs, write songs, and I would never really do anything with them. And let me just backtrack a little bit. Shout out to my sister Erica, because in the mid '90s, when I was 14, 15 years old, she had aspirations of, starting her music career. And at times she would drag her little brother to the studio for whatever reason. She would just drag him to the studio. And that's when I began the education of writing a song, composing a song, writing lyrics began, because you just don't know. You just hear songs on the radio, yada, yada, whatever. But looking at my sister's notes, peeking at her notes, how to construct a song. Verse one, the hook. Verse two, the hook. The bridge. I didn't know what that stuff was. So looking at as I was watching her record and just looking at her notes, I'm like, oh, this is how you do it. So for me, that's when it's to kind of catch you up now, as far as what I was saying, as far as writing songs. I was writing music all the time. I would just get into I would get an idea and I would write it down, jot it down, and I would have a habit of not doing anything with it. And October of 2014, I wrote, which ended up being my very first single, Selfish Pride. I was at my desk one day at work, and I think I wrote that song in a day and a half. And I had to make a deal with myself, and I said, okay, Derek, you have 6 months to record this record, or you're never going to do music again. Go and do it. And I did.
it's pretty cool. Did you? What was the first song you ever wrote? Like, since you wrote songs a lot, was what was? Do you remember the first one?
I would say there was a love song I wrote. It was a breakup song I wrote to my girlfriend when she and I had broken up. I was like maybe a junior in high school, and it was called "Why Did You Leave Me" or something like that, something crazy. And what happened is that I back in the day, when artists used to put out, like if they had a single out, and I'm aging myself now, I would buy the single cassette, but on the other side, it will be an instrumental. So I wrote that song to Faith Evans, "Soon as I Get Home," which is one of my favorite songs from her. So it's a ballad. So I literally wrote my lyrics to that instrumental, and I recorded myself singing it and gave it to her. It was the goofiest thing ever. But that was just one of the first things that I ever wrote. That was, I was in high school at the time, young and dumb. You don't know anything. So that was the earliest memories I could remember of writing a song.
because both your parents were in the industry, did you ever like have doubts or like worried if you weren't going to be successful or you couldn't fill in their shoes? Like, did you ever have those thoughts?
Um, honestly, I shied away from it because my mom was only in it for maybe a couple of years, and obviously her goal was to have a family and everything. So it was more of my dad that went on and lived his dream. Um, I actually shied away from it on the simple fact of my, just I didn't want people saying, "Oh, you're wanting to do what your dad did." Oh, you hear those comments, and it's like I shied away from it. But deep down in my gut, deep down in my soul, like I said, I always wanted to entertain. I always wanted to create. I always that's just something. But I am a musician, you know what I mean. So I did do drum corps for 15 seasons. So that was my creative outlet, so to speak. But at the same time, it's like I knew that once I was done with that, that the entertainment thing was gonna have to take high priority because that was something I've always wanted to do was create and entertain at the same time as best I could.
What was your biggest inspiration behind every second make it count?
Well, like I stated before, as far as the record itself or the video.
The video and the record.
Well, I'll start with the record first. So right after I had released Selfish Pride, obviously it was like, what's next? So the same producer, Stefan Mosley, who is now in Germany, he and I we were going back and forth, and I said, obviously, the genre that I want to be in is the electronic dance, scene. I love dance music. I've always loved it since I could earliest I could remember, and that was more or less the direction I wanted to take creatively, for as far as me is concerned. Um, he sent me a couple of dance tracks, and there was one that I was kind of like, I don't know. And the one that ultimately I ended up using, he actually called it Every Second for whatever reason. I don't know why. And one day I was in New York City. I had an audition. I had a TV show audition I had to go on. And for me, I actually had to, from where I live, I have to drive an hour to the train, then catch the train to New York City, and then catch the subway wherever I need. So this is just a regular thing. This is prior to pandemic, folks. Just for the record. So what happened is I had my MacBook with me, and I remember going to the audition, doing my thing, hop back on the train, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna start writing to this track. And I can remember getting off the train. It was about, like I said, the train ride was about a little over an hour, about 80 minutes or so. And I got off the train and I was singing the hook. I was singing the hook and I'm like, I think I got something here. And I really went and dissected, just as far as just what makes sense. What am I talking about? Why am I, what is this message? So that's what, and there was a couple of rewrites that I had to do, just from a lyrical perspective, because I wanted to make everything to line up the way, ultimately make it make sense, right? You wanted to do this, ascend, you know what I mean? So you're taking people on a journey is ultimately what you're doing with music. Now, switching to the music video itself, there's a lot of stories with this music video because initially, initially, me and Bruce, and shout out to Bruce Wabbit, and we'll talk about him in his podcast in a little bit, but he and I were thinking about doing a short film to Every Second, and it was going to be more or less of a remake of the movie Taken by Liam Neeson, where somebody was going to kidnap my wife and my daughter, and I got a phone call from obviously the antagonist, obviously, and saying it, well, where I am, so it's like it's one of those things. It was going to be a fight. I'm just going to be driving, to this location. I get out the car, step out, leather jacket in hand, and ready to kick some ass. And we're gonna have a fight scene and this whole deal. I get my family back. We ride off into the sunset. Then, of course, the COVID-19 pandemic happened, and because the borders were shut down, Bruce couldn't travel to the States. He was in Canada. So it was like, oh boy, what do we do? So the initial thought was, okay, I'm going to be in front of a green screen. And we were going to just, I was going to sing the record, but we were going to talk about COVID because that was what was going on at the time in the world was COVID. The world was shut down. Like just seeing the streets like New York City empty, seeing Times Square empty was scary. As a frequent, as a, obviously I go to New York all the time and seeing the street just empty was just like, this is not even like reality. You know what I mean? um, Seeing cities like Vegas and Paris, London, Chicago, Los Angeles, just the streets, just no one there. So that was going to be kind of the theme of the of the video. But of course, in late May of 2020 was when the George Floyd murder happened, and to say I went into depression about it was an understatement. Like that was pretty like I was scared to even drive because I'm like, okay, what if that happens to me? So me and Bruce had a long conversation as far as what direction do we want to go in? What do we really talk about this? So we really sat down and mapped everything out. And he said, I think this is the direction we're going to go in, but it's going to be more of a positive spin on it, using the lyrics of the song to tie into let's treat each other with kindness and respect, regardless of your racial, your ethnicity, your background, regardless of economic status, your sexual identity, sexual orientation, whatever it is that you identify or whatever, let's just make every second count and let's just treat each other good. I mean, because it's seven continents, obviously six continents where people live, but there's over 7 point whatever billion people on planet Earth. Why can't we just be nice to each other? So that ended up being the theme of the video, and that's why we ended up going with that.
That's pretty cool. I watched the music video and it was done really beautifully. So it was really nice to watch and listen to.
Appreciate it.
What was your biggest motivation to continue to working on it and doing it and not giving up, or was that never even a thought?
Well, there was some stop and goes with this project, and some things I cannot talk about, but
Okay.
I can tell you that it was just the record itself. It was just like it was a lot of stop and goes with it. There were some people involved, and they weren't involved anymore. Then there was some people involved, and they were not involved anymore. And it was just like a pull and tug, like all the way. And I literally almost threw this project away. I said, I don't even want to do this. I think it was the beginning of, oh God, yeah, it was like late 2019. It was like around the time when we were gonna when Bruce and I were talking about the motif and stuff. Like when the pandemic happened, I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna even do this at this point because with all the baggage that was happening with others involved, yada yada, just everything, you know what I mean? And once he and I had started talking about going in another direction with the video, it began to boost my confidence a little bit as far as okay, maybe this can work, and I'm gonna do this myself. I'm gonna really, and that's when during the pandemic, and I'm glad that, in hindsight, I'm glad the pandemic did happen because it forced me to make some moves that I never thought I would do. I started my own record label, just to distribute my own music, and thus you see here. I don't know if it's obviously this is not a video podcast, but obviously Lucy at Day Music, which is all me, and I started that, and that's how I'm releasing my own music. So I did that, and I started working on merchandise and working on all these other things. So understanding who I am as a brand was one of those things. Is like I could do this myself. So that was the determining factor of me, releasing the whole entire project. And once the video was ready, once we got everything together, once I got my mixing and mastering done with as far as the EP was concerned, and we put together a video package to tell people that the pre-order was ready and everything. I was like, it's all gangbusters from here. And I was just really excited. I could just remember clock striking midnight on June 4th of last year when the video went live and the EP went live worldwide, and I just broke down. I just said, I can't believe like through all the the journey, all the ups and downs and the no's and the this and I don't get this is not good enough or whatever, you know, I really, I went ahead and did it. And that's one of my most proudest accomplishments that everything I've ever done in my life was releasing this project.
What was something you learned through the process of making this video?
Time management, um, learning how to juggle a lot of different responsibilities at once. I mean, I'll pull the curtain back a little bit, but this video was filmed in my house. I had this device here, this trusty iPhone Pro Max. I had a green screen and I had an LED light. I had a wireless speaker. I had an iPad to play the music, and I had a clapboard so I can identify which part of the scene, which scene I'm doing, which take I'm doing, so it will make easy for Bruce to edit. You know what I mean? So we were basically doing this all virtually. So I was wearing the hat of a director, assistant director, production assistant. You know what I mean? I was wearing so many hats in the confines of my own home, and I was able to just do this, and I did it over 2 days. So I stretched it out for 2 days just to make sure I got enough takes and everything, but I wanted to make sure it was done the right way. So I learned a lot about time management. I learned a lot about, like I said, juggling responsibilities, but taking one thing at a time, setting small goals. Small goals here. Okay, we can do this here. And next thing you know, I was done. And I was like, oh my God. And I'm literally Dropboxing everything to Bruce. And then thus the video that you saw. So it was when I said in an interview recently that it was really two people that did this. It's the God's honest truth. It was only two people, and it was me and Bruce. So, a huge debt of gratitude to him, for him showing me certain things from a visual perspective that I would have never been able to do without his guidance and his direction, his advice. And like I said, I can't take all the credit. This was definitely me and him.
That's crazy that you recorded it in your house. Do you know whenever Bruce edited it, was it hard to make it look real? Because it looked like it was on the streets, like it. Because sometimes when people use green screens, it's so obvious, and it wasn't obvious in that. So, like, how did you able to pull that off?
The New York stuff was literally shot in New York City because we were originally
Okay,
going to do that part was filmed in New York City, which I should have. My apologies about that. The singing stuff was all done in my house, but
okay,
the New York City stuff was literally shot late at night. Like I drove from where I live 2 hours to New York City, and we shot the footage. We shot the footage literally. I don't know if you saw the time where it says 11:42. That was the real time where we literally got started shooting. When I walked down the subway, literally, like we walked down the subway and waiting for the train and all that stuff. That was all shot. That was done in 2019. So
okay.
it was done at nighttime. So it was like different parts of, as far as how we were able to do it. But we were tying in stories because originally that wasn't supposed to have been a part of the music video. Because
Okay.
again, we're talking about, doing the Taken theme.
Right.
That what I did was basically the oncoming. I guess it was supposed to be initially the initial drop of the record. That was a kind of the preview type thing, but we ended up making a story out of it of me watching breaking news in Times Square, and the video starts. So that's how we were able to break everything down as far as doing what we could virtually because literally, like, we were in a
Yeah.
pandemic, man. We couldn't do anything.
That's pretty cool. Did you feel like in 2020, as bad of a year as it was, you were able to understand yourself more and more of who you are and who you want to be with everything going on?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And as I was alluded to before, like I said, I would have never put in the time to start my record label. I would have never put in the time to start, obviously making the logo, the time to, as far as, starting my own online t-shirt store, It was so many things I was doing during that downtime where I literally had to like, okay, what am I going to do from here on out? How am I going to make this worth my time, as far as worth the time and making something of this? So, and I know a lot of creative went through the same exact thing. We had to rediscover different ways to do this. Like even for me, like I was even taking acting classes via Zoom because that was what my acting coach was providing at the time, and it's probably one of the best things that could have happened because I'm like, I'm not getting auditions because everything is shut down, but I want to keep my acting chops going. You know what I mean? So I was doing things of that nature. I was writing songs. I was, obviously doing this, filming this music video, coming up with the label and all that. So it really helped me so much, and I learned a lot about myself that I'm capable of doing anything that I want to do, and not. And when your back's against the wall, you're gonna have to you have to be forced to do something you thought you'd never do, and that was my mindset. So although technically, I mean, I was working, yeah, but I was also just being creative and finding creative ways to do this.
Have you always been interested in acting?
Yeah. I started my love for acting started when I was about 4. I saw the movie Mommy Dearest with Faye Dunaway, and even at 4 years old, hearing a woman screaming "No more wire hangers," that was like the line I used to say all the time around the house. But it was like I set in my mind at that point. I said I want to do that. At 4 years old, I said that, and when I was in first grade, I was in the seventh. I was one of the seven dwarfs in a play in school, and I began to. I just had this imagination of like I just want to just perform. I want to perform. I want to perform, and I would always put it aside. There were times where I was ready to like, okay, I want to do this. I want to do this, and I would just put just like the music thing. I would just put it aside. I don't think so. I don't think so. I don't think so. And I think in 2007, I took some headshots. A coworker of mine, her mom, shout out to Trudy Wilkerson. I love her to death. She did my headshots for me, and I was gonna get started then. I still have those pictures to this day, and I was like, nah, not yet. Time's not right. And then 2 years later, I can just remember going with a friend of mine to one of his gigs with his rock band, and he always wanted to be in a rock band, and he was smiling, and I was when he was performing, and I said, I got to get off my rear end and do something, and I woke up the next day saying, all right, Derrick, you're gonna do this, and I text my best friend, I said, hey, I'm gonna be an actor, and he was like, it was a question mark. I was like, yeah, I'm going to be an actor. And he was like, all right, cool. And not even like, and he was like, where the hell is this coming from? And I began researching acting schools and going places here and there. And January 12th of 2010, I started John Robert Powers in Philadelphia. So huge shout out to Mindy Sills and Amanda Lynch for definitely giving me my first start and as far as opening my understanding and taking it from there.
What up to the music video? What was your favorite acting experience?
My favorite acting experience is well now as far as the music video for Every Second or my very first music video of Selfish Pride.
Or just up to every second, like uh, because you did you were in movies and shows, right?
Yeah. So I would say my favorite, and I usually I like to give the Tom Brady answer because everyone used to ask him, what's your favorite Super Bowl? And he always says the next one. And that would be the general answer I would give people during interviews. Like, what's your favorite movie or your best thing you ever been? I'm like, oh, the next one, whatever that might be. But but for all intents and purposes, truthfully, I would have to say there was a show called there's two, I'll give you two answers. There was a show I did on the ID channel called The Perfect Murder, and I was given creative liberty with the script, and I think to the point where I made people laugh after we yelled cut because there were some lines in there that coincided with the story but it was underlines of it was some comedic undertones with it in a serious manner of the fact that my character's friend um killed his girlfriend, and I discovered the body in the back seat of the car. And the thing I was like, was she drunk? That wasn't even in the script. And I'm thinking of real life situations because if a friend of mine shows me somebody in the back seat, I'm like, oh, they had too much to drink. But it made sense, right?
Yeah.
So that was one, and I would say the other one was Where Hearts Lie, directed by the great Tony Lindsay and Peter Iengo. I was booked for that on the simple fact that a girl that I had met in an acting class maybe 3 years prior, well, 3 years before we even filmed it, we were in class together and we kept in contact. And I started my podcast because she wanted to promote her movie that she was doing at the time. So I brought her on my show and we were talking about her movie and everything. And she was on production for this movie, Where Hearts Lie. And then one day she sends me a text message. She's like, hey, what are you doing? And I was like, what's up? She was like, send your headshot, resume, and reel to this email address now. I'm like, oh, okay. And I just send it. She was like, there was no questions. I'm like, okay, one of the people I trust in this industry. And she was like, yeah, there's a movie called Where Hearts Lie. I think you'd be great for it. Playing prison guard, yada yada. We'll more information. They saw it, and I think like 20 minutes later, she's like, all right, you got the job, you booked it. We'll send you the script tonight. Look over it and everything, not just the sides, but the whole script. So I'm like, okay. So I was really excited, and that was my first opportunity. That was the first red carpet I ever went to.
That's pretty cool.
I went to a red carpet. It was on June 6th, 2016, or June 7th. I can't remember. It was June 7th, 2016, and I can just remember this as being a big deal. It was in New York City at the AMC Theater on 42nd Street in Times Square, and I get there, suit and everything. I'm all dressed up, and I'm on a red carpet. I'm like, this is insane. Like, I mean, I'm just a kid from Newark, New Jersey, and I'm just like, I would have never envisioned anything like something of this magnitude, and here I am. And so that's why I always say that's one of my favorite things I've ever done. Not because just the red carpet thing or whatever, but the work that went behind it. The people that I met that I'm still friends with today. Shout out to Erin Sanderson. I love you. She's one of my really good friends in this industry, and we did the scene together. She was the lead actress in the movie, and I did the scene with her. So she made me
Pretty
better,
cool.
and that's one of my favorite projects I've ever done.
That's awesome. Is music your way of communicating with the world?
Yeah, it is, because I think with film, you know, there's so many ways you could tell stories, but I think with music, you have free reign to express yourself and use different metaphors and use different ways to convey your message, and thus the video that we're talking about today. I really wanted this to be a global anthem. I wanted this to truly be something where the world can gravitate towards, grab it, and just take the message and say, yeah, this makes sense and I love it. So I think that's a really good way to communicate with the world. Because I mean, think about the most influential artists in our time. We could talk about the Michael Jacksons of the world. We could talk about the Tupac Shakurs of the world. We talk about the Madonnas of the world. We could talk about a lot of people that have influenced, pop culture, the world itself. I mean, Michael Jackson. I mean, listen, there are times I've seen concerts of his where like people were just passing out before screaming for this man, and he was talking about so many things in his music in regards to bringing the world together. I mean, heal the world. I mean, come on, that doesn't get any better than that. He really was all about that. Madonna had a song on her True Blue album called "Love Makes the World Go Round," and there were so many messages in that song that a lot of people miss out on sometimes. And but it made sense in regards to bringing the world together. It's important.
Yeah. What's your podcast called and what is it about?
Well, I'll give an exclusive right now. After an 8.5 year hiatus, the DLU podcast will be coming back this fall. And this is an exclusive, so this is the first time anyone's hearing about it. But I had I was mainly it was a setup similar to this. But my thing is I want to interview everybody. I'm not it's not pro wrestling heavy. Granted, I'm in the pro wrestling space, but I want to have wrestlers. I want to have musicians. I want to have recording artists. I want to have social media influencers. I want to have fashion designers, models, comedians, whatever it is. Because at the end of the day, entertainment. There's so many different pieces of the pie with
Right.
entertainment, right?
Right.
And there's a lot of people wearing multiple hats within entertainment, even athletes. Athletes are actors, right? Then you got some then you got some musicians that are becoming athletes. J. Cole, for example, is playing basketball. You know what I mean? So heck, back in the day, Master P played for the Hornets and he played for the Toronto Raptors. So it's possible, you know? So that's what that's going to be about. Like I said, it's going to be coming this fall, and just stay tuned. And as far as when the actual first episode will drop, stay tuned.
All right. Um, what got you into wrestling? I almost forgot that you had said you were a pro wrestler.
Well, I'm
Like
not a
what?
pro. Well,
Uh,
I'm not a pro wrestler. I'm a pro wrestling ring announcer. Actually, I started um, my first exposure to pro wrestling. I was about 4 years old, and my mom had kind of introduced me to it. You know, watching wrestling because she was a wrestling fan, and I just became a fanatic. I Everything about the business I love, and my grandmother, God rest her soul, she was heavily involved. She was a fan too. So if my mother wasn't ordering pay-per-views, then my grandmother was. If my grandmother wasn't ordered, then my mom was. So it was I had that support, from a really loving mother and grandmother that said, this is Derrick's thing. So I've watched every promotion under the sun. I don't care if it's the WWF, now WWE, um, the NWA, the AWA, and WCCW from back in the day. Till now, we have WWE, we have AEW, we have Ring of Honor, we have New Japan Pro Wrestling, we have MLW. You know what I mean? You have Impact Wrestling. Shout out to Mickey James. I love you. There's so many, and then I'm a part of the world famous Monster Factory, and Monster Factory has been responsible for so many careers in pro wrestling from its inception till today. Um, Back in the day, um, the late great Pretty Boy Larry Sharp and Nature Boy Buddy Rogers started the Monster Factory in South Jersey, and then obviously Larry Sharp just took it on. And his first notable student was the late great Bam Bam Bigelow. Bam Bam Bigelow was from the Monster Factory, and we could and the list goes on and on and on of the plethora of individuals that have stepped foot in the Monster Factory and have done great things. You heard of the Big Show, you heard of the Godfather, Sheamus, D'Lo Brown, Tatanka, King Kong Bundy, Virgil, Tony Atlas, the Headbangers, the late great Balls Mahoney, Flyboy Rocco Rock, the Pit Bulls. And then now we have in the WWE, Damian Priest, Matt Riddle. And in NXT, we have referee Felix Fernandez and now Sloan Jacobs, that's in NXT. And in AEW, we have Dark Order member number 10. We have QT Marshall. We have Nick Komoroto. And in Impact Wrestling, we have Steve Macklin. So there's a bunch of so many of the factory people that's around the business now. And here's a fact: there's been 38 WrestleManias. 37 out of 38 WrestleManias featured at least one Monster Factory graduate. That is a factual fact.
that's pretty cool. It's kind of interesting and kind of how you knew you wanted to be an actor at 4, and you also were into wrestling at 4. It's like a lot happened at 4.
I told you the things that I'm doing now, like I said, are the things that I love. It's
Right.
not something that I woke up one day saying, "Oh, I want to be in the wrestling business. Oh, I want to be in that." No, these are things that I've always wanted to do. Acting opened the door for music. Music and acting opened the door for pro wrestling. You know what I mean? So it was a
Yeah.
gradual thing that happened, and then the music, the acting, and pro wrestling opened the doors for me to open up my online t-shirt store. You know what I mean? So it's like it was a gradual thing for this to happen at the right time.
I'm happy for you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Do you feel like as a musical artist or that you have responsibility to culture?
I would say yeah. Um, there's obviously, we say that we're not role models or anything like that, but I just think that if there's an 8-year old, look that's on YouTube and they see my video, they're gonna want to be inspired by that. You know what I mean? I want to make my music as friendly to everybody and all audiences as possible. I can remember for my first record, it was a breakup song, and the video it shared that story, it told that story rather, but there was a woman that commented on my video thanking me for helping her get through a breakup because of the fact that her boyfriend or whatever had really treated her badly, and the breakup just was not it was not an easy breakup. So she said that my song helped her heal. That meant the absolute world to me because that let me know there's a bigger purpose out there. You know what I mean? So that means people are watching you. So you have to be although I don't put the phrase role model out there because I don't feel that I'm a role model, but people are watching how you move, people are watching what you do, what you say, and things of that nature. So that comes with that for sure.
Do you feel like being a creative person requires that you give back or tell a particular story or not do something?
Telling story, I mean, but that's what we do, we tell stories. That's how you create an audience, that's how you are able to come across. You have to tell stories. And there are so many ways you can tell stories. Heck, you could tell stories without saying a word. Just using your facials, you could tell stories. There's many ways you could tell stories. Obviously, you could tell stories through song, you could tell stories through film, you could tell stories through spoken word, you could tell stories, and even in pro wrestling, there it's a non-verbal contact sport. You know what I mean? So there's so many ways you can tell stories, but as long as you have a foundation, a who, a what, a when, a where, a why, and how, as long as those questions are answered, that's how you're able to convey and tell a story.
Is there anything else you'd like to talk about that I didn't ask?
Well, there is the music video that is being nominated right now for the LA Music Video Awards. That's for best EDM video that takes place on October 1st. So if everyone can go to my social media, you can click on the link tree. And the first link at the top is going to be the LA Music Video Awards link where you can go and actually vote. So you can vote for my music video every second, make it count for the LA Music Video Awards for Best EDM Video. So that's Best Electronic Dance Music Video. So I'm really excited about that.
And people can find you on Linktree and Instagram.
They can find me on Instagram and Twitter at the real DT Lou. That's all together at the real DT Lou. That's Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, and TikTok. You can find me on Facebook, Derrick T Lewis official page. So if you look up Derrick T Lewis, you'll be able to find me. You'll be able to follow me there, and you'll be able to get all updates on my social media. You can go to my website, derricktLewis.com. You can also go to my t-shirt store, shop.derricktLewis.com. I have a few t-shirts up there. Obviously, I have a pro wrestling theme t-shirt up there. I have two t-shirts that was supporting Pride Month where I donated money to an LGBTQ organization. I also have I have a pro-choice T-shirt and I'm donating all money from the proceeds of that shirt to Planned Parenthood. And there's still a breast cancer awareness T-shirt that I have up there all year round. And obviously, with breast cancer awareness month coming up in the month of October, all proceeds from the sale of that shirt will go directly towards a breast cancer awareness organization of my choosing.
And are there any songs that you're currently writing that you'd like to make as the next video, or what's your next big project?
To be announced. So stay tuned.